Hey horror fans, welcome back to another video on the Terror Talk channel where I give commentary on creepy stories and conspiracy theories. The music you hear I composed myself. If you're struggling financially like a lot of people are, check the pinned comment after watching. I have something that will help you out a lot. Now, let's get into it and have some fun.
This is a story spanning nearly 7 years, so I will try to be as straightforward and to the point as possible. I live in a suburban neighborhood surrounded by rural countryside. There's nothing but open fields and winding country roads around it, and it's practically impossible to get anywhere without a car. It is a very beautiful place, but very secluded. As a result, I often feel confined here, which has only gotten worse during quarantine. The first time I remember seeing something suspicious was when I was 9 years old. My little brother and I, who was 7 at the time, were taking our dogs down towards the front of our street near.
Man, that time during quarantine was terrible, wasn't it? God, I have some horror stories of my own for that. Not actual horror stories, but just the mental anxiety that I went through during that time. But do you have any scary stories about COVID and quarantine? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about them.
Near the main road. We were casually talking and not paying much attention to what we were doing. Suddenly, we heard somebody call to us, "Hey, come here." A big, white SUV was parked at the start of our street, and a man was sticking his hand out the window, motioning for us to come over. I remember distinctly that it was a tall white guy with curly blonde hair. My little brother started to walk his way, but I stopped him. I'm a very paranoid person, and I'd heard all the horror stories about kids being lured into vans, never to be seen again. I led us off in the other direction, back to our house, while also keeping an eye on the guy in the car. When he saw that we were leaving, he turned his car around and drove off.
That was very smart of them to do. And that little brother shouldn't have been as trusting as he was. That was pretty stupid. But yeah, that was very smart of them to be so paranoid at that because you should never trust some creepy lurking guy in a van in a neighborhood. Like, yeah, no, that just screams red flags all over the place. So kudos to them for stopping their little brother on getting into that van because they probably would have taken him and they would have never seen him again, sadly. There are a lot of sickos in the world like that, but kudos to them for taking the right courses of action.
Upon arriving home, I told my mom about it, but she dismissed it, saying he was probably just going to ask us for directions or something like that. It scared me a little at the time, but I didn't think much of it until now.
Again, it pisses me off when parents are so freaking dismissive of that. God,
A year later, during Halloween of 2014, another incident happened. A black sedan was apparently following trick or treaters down the street. When a parent approached it, it tried to run them over before driving away and out of sight. To make matters worse, the license plates appeared to have been taken off. I didn't see any of this myself, but some of the adults in the neighborhood had made a big stink about it, and I was given yet another don't talk to strangers lecture. People were especially sensitive about this kind of thing at the time since the murder of Hannah Graham had recently taken place in my area. Fast forward another 4 years to summer break in 2018. Some neighbors of ours were out of town on vacation, and they asked me if I could pet sit for them while they were away. I had to go by 3 times a day to let their dog out, once in the morning around 8 a.m., once in the afternoon after lunch, and once in the evening at 9. Their house sits to the right of our neighborhood, off the main road. To get there from my house, I can go to the end of my street and take a right, or I can cut through the woods and into their backyard. Going through the woods is faster, but the brush is very dense and the trees are close together, so I usually would just go along the street. One night, wrapped up in a session of COD with my friends, I forgot to let the dog out. When I remembered, it was past 10, and I rushed over, worried that he might pee on the floor inside. It was pitch black out, and I couldn't see anything but the beam of my flashlight and the glowing stars in the sky. Luckily, the dog had been able to hold it, so I let him out as usual. After he went, I brought him back in and was prepared to leave again when I looked out the window and saw a black sedan parked next to the driveway. This made me uncomfortable since I was pretty sure it wasn't there when I first showed up at the house. There were no other houses nearby, and I knew for a fact that the owners weren't coming back for another few days. After debating what I should do for a few minutes, I finally decided to go back and cut through the woods. I did so and got back without issue. To play it safe, I cut through the woods for the rest of my time pet sitting, but I never saw the black car again. Now, these occurrences alone would not be enough to merit a story, but it's what happened recently that really terrifies me. It makes me question whether these events might actually be connected. I run for the track team at my school, and since quarantine had prevented us from having practice, I go running every day on the roads around my house. My street isn't very long, so I often run off the main road and other connecting ones. For the first few months, everything was going fine. I would jog around for an hour, taking in the scenery and exploring the various different country lanes. But about a month ago, I was running back home on the main road when I noticed that a car seemed to be following me. I always run on the left side of the road, going towards traffic. This is so that if a car comes up behind me on a blind curve or in an area with low visibility, it won't hit me from behind where I can't see. The car, coincidentally a large white SUV, was on the other side of the road, going about the same speed I was jogging. This was especially odd because there aren't many cars on that road, and you can go much faster than on a busy one. Unsure of its intentions, I turned down a small side street with a cul-de-sac at the end. It didn't follow, so I ran down to the circle and went back home. However, the next day, it followed me again. This time, I saw it sitting at the start of a driveway, and it pulled out after me once I passed it. Like the day before, it followed me for about a mile before I turned down the same street, where it promptly drove off. This continued. Every day for a 10-day period, it followed me. At first, I thought that it might be going somewhere on a schedule that just happened to coincide.
Not only would this be creepy, but this would piss me off if this were happening to me. Like, I would be so pissed. And I don't know why this person doesn't call the police at this point, because if a van is following you, like, every day, like, I get that it might be a route, a regular route that they have or something like that, but it's still pretty suspicious, and honestly, it doesn't take a lot to anger me. So, if this kind of thing were to happen, I would get really pissed off and want to do something or say something to the driver of the van, but I know that's not a smart thing to do, especially if I don't have any weapons or any kind of protection on me. So I probably would call the police in that instance if I were running, and I would make it known to the van somehow that I was calling the police. And then they could screw off because this would not only be creepy, but it would piss me off as well. I'm not even kidding.
With my runs. To test this theory, I decided to run an hour later than I usually did. The first day I tried this, it wasn't there. The next day, though, I was disturbed to see that it was once again following right behind me. This definitely unnerved me, but I was hesitant to tell my parents because I was worried they'd forbid me from running. Furthermore, it hadn't attempted to do anything yet, so I decided I could put up with it as long as I was careful and watched it closely. On the 11th day of being followed, I turned down the side street to see a black sedan sitting at the end. At first, I thought nothing of it. There were a few houses on the street, and it likely belonged to somebody who lived there. But as I began to get closer, I noticed something odd. Underneath the car, barely visible, was the silhouette of a person. They barely fit and were huddled on the far side to avoid being seen. I immediately got chills and ran off in the other direction, looking over my shoulder to make sure they stayed put. To make matters worse, I saw that white SUV, which usually drove away, was sitting at the top of the street, penning me in. I was feeling panicky now and decided that I preferred the evil I knew to the one that I didn't. So I picked up the pace and tried to sprint by the SUV. When I was within a few feet of it, a man jumped out and ran after me. I easily outpaced him, and thank God that my months of training had paid off. When it became clear he couldn't catch me, he yelled at me to come back and said he just wanted to talk. I responded with two fingers, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, good for them, honestly. You know, that is super creepy. And flipping them off, definitely the right move. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, they could have maybe had a gun and started shooting at them, but like, kind of crouched down like that, hiding in the car, and, all of a sudden just coming out like that and trying to attack them and saying, I just want to talk, like, that's not normal at all. So, yeah, good thing that they did have extensive running training so that they could get out of that situation. Maybe other people wouldn't have had that type of stamina to get away from that, but man, this is so creepy.
I sprinted the remaining mile back to my house. I finally broke down and told my mom, who got me on the phone with the police. Sadly, though, since I didn't get a license plate, there wasn't much they could do. They promised that they would look into it, but as far as I can tell, nothing has been done. These experiences have haunted me for the past couple of weeks, and with all my spare time, I've had a lot of time to contemplate the situation. After connecting the dots, it's clear to me that these men have been trying for multiple years to kidnap a child from our street. There are quite a lot of children in my neighborhood, which explains why they frequent it so often. It worries me that somebody less cautious than myself might find themselves in a similar situation and fall prey to these predators. I still have nightmares about the man who chased me down the street. He was very tall with blonde curls, the same man who tried to abduct me when I was 9 years old.
Yeah, that's really creepy and scary, and who's to say that they never have been successful? Maybe they have. And that's the sick and scary thing about it. Is that if they have been doing this for years, I find it hard to believe that they haven't kidnapped one person. But yeah, either way, it's a really sad and sick thing. And there is stuff like that goes on a lot, unfortunately. So always have your wits about you. If you have kids, teach them to be vigilant and aware of fans and creepy strangers and things like that that try to lure you in, and just make them vigilant and aware, because that would be a terrible thing to have happen. And I don't have kids, but if that were to ever happen to me and I had a kid, that I don't think you'd ever be the same after that. So just be vigilant and aware. And this is definitely a creepy story, and I hope that you enjoyed my commentary and the music, and be sure to check my money saving opportunity down below, because I think it will help you a lot to save on everyday expenses. And I will see you in the next video.